was a dream, a major dream for all members of the Egyptian community here in Canada. Until finally, last year, in the month of July, the dream became true. The month of July became the month of the Egyptian heritage in Canada. During this month, people in Canada, along with the Egyptian community, celebrate the heritage of Egypt, Egypt of the past and Egypt of the present, Egypt, their motherland, side by side with their beloved country, Canada. Today, as part of the celebrations of this great event, the Egyptian Heritage Month in Canada, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by two very supreme guests. And I'm not saying this as a compliment. This is absolutely the truth. The first guest tonight is an international figure, a man with many, many hats. He is a barrister, he's a writer, he's a great activist, a great defender of liberalism around the world. He is a professor, he owns academic chairs at major universities, including U of T here in Canada. That's the minimum I can say, really. If I keep really describing exactly how great that man is, I'll never say enough. My second guest is equally a great man. He is the pioneer, he's the founder, he's the owner of this great event. He's the man who we really owe a great thank you. He is the Canadian of Egyptian origin, MPP Sherif Sabaawy. And our first great guest, the man who I previously introduced, is the great Dr.Tarek Heggy. So I welcome both of you to this meeting. It's a great pleasure and honor to have both of you with me here. And to start off with Dr. Tarek, you are an Egyptian professor, writer, you fought for liberalism all around the world, and you've toured the world. You are an internationally recognized figure. What is the significance of having an Egyptian Heritage Month in a country like Canada to you?
I always think that we never introduced our heritage, our history, our culture the way it deserves. I even go beyond that and I say I don't think that we did 4 or 5% of the job required. If we go back to the 19th century, Europe was crazy about Egyptology. When people say that we have a word, Egyptology, to describe the academic genius in our history, I always say, no, there is another word, Egyptomania. And this is a unique word. If I compare the way Europe was keen on our history to what we are doing today, I feel very disappointed. We can introduce ourselves to the Western people who are very keen. These are the people who were behind the two words, Egyptology and Egyptomania. Our ancient Egyptian history was discovered by Western scholars. Immediately after Napoleon, 3 years in Egypt, Europe became mad about Egypt history. Are we doing an equal job? No, we are not, but we ought to. And you are now doing part of that. The Western people in Europe, in North America and in Australia can absorb 20, 30 than what we are doing today. They are very keen. They are very keen on the ancient Egyptian history, in our heritage, and also in our contemporary modern Egypt. Why? Because it was a cosmopolitan experience. Egypt, since 1805, is a unique case of a Mediterranean society. And I believe that we ought to do double, triple the efforts to make those who are keen already to receive from our side what satisfies their keenness about our history and about our present time.
So thank you very much for this, Dr. Tarek, because really, yes, Egyptomania, Egyptology, like the science of Egypt, it's like, it's a very unique word to have a science after Egypt. And indeed, like you said, after the discovery of the Rosetta Stone, that, like sort of uncoded the Egyptian hieroglyphics, all the world started having the Egyptomania. They became maniacs about the Egyptian civilization. And if you go around the world, if you go to international museums, you would find the Egyptian section to be the most popular part. Indeed, absolutely. Now, moving to MPP Sherif, and thank you very much for being with us tonight as well. How did the idea come to life? Like, can you just take us through the timeline of the idea, from it being the general idea until it becoming an established fact and reality?
Okay, just to understand how can a bill like the Bill 106 pass, you need to understand that the bills are two types. There's government bills and private members. So private member bill is the bills which get introduced by members privately, like his own bill. Mm-hmm. And every member of parliament have in the 4 years, 4 times. So we have once a year, almost, have opportunity to submit a private member bill. So government bills would be anything related to publics, like budget and construction, regulation, changing of the constitution here or there. So none of this can be introduced by government. Right? Mm-hmm. So to understand how this Portuguese week or Indian month or South Asian Heritage Month or all those type of months, Black History months, all these months have been introduced through private member bills. Mm-hmm. So we never had an Egyptian member of parliament. So you can't expect to have an Egyptian Heritage Month, right? So the idea came as I have been active 18 years, 19 years now in politics, and I attended all those community and different culture and different race months. I have been all the time saying, why we don't have an Egyptian?
Why not us?
Why not us? And the community, just to give an idea, maybe Dr. Tarek doesn't know too much about the breakdown of the Egyptian community in Canada. The Egyptian origin Canadians are very recognized and very special. Mm-hmm. Like 99% of the Egyptian in Canada are either doctors or pharmacists or engineers or academia, like professors and doctors. 99%, which make the Egyptian community in Canada the highest community in education per capita. Mm-hmm. In Canada, we are the highest. So with this amount of recognition in the professional and academia, why we don't have an Egyptian month so recognized when everybody know about it? Like I agree totally with Dr. Tarek about everybody very fascinated mm-hmm. by the Egyptian and Egyptology and pharaohs and the history of Egypt, and all of them know. Sometimes they know specifics about history, especially if they have a specific niche of interest. Like if somebody's interested in astrology or interested in mummies, mummification,
Yeah.
or interested specific about magic, or like, so he already read enough about the Egyptian history and old Egyptians.
How everything began, really, like how everything began. It's the cradle of civilization and human knowledge.
Yes. So that where the idea came from. I said, like, we need that. And as soon as I won my seat in the parliament in 7th of June 2018, and I was decided that the first opportunity would come to me, I will introduce the Egyptian Heritage Month. Again, it doesn't mean that you apply or put the bill forward. That means it gets achieved. Like the Greek community have been much faster than us into this. They have, I think, more than 5 members of parliament federally and provincially, and they didn't manage to pass it. They put the bill 3 times and they failed to pass it. So that was a lesson. Like when I decided to do it, we have been working for about 3 months to make sure that everything lined up properly. The oppositions, even the independent member of parliaments were supporting it. And I still have the recording, which I will do. I would invite Dr. Heggy at some point of time to give us a couple of words in the documentary we are doing about the Egyptian Heritage Month. We are putting a documentary. We'll put some parts of the speeches of each of even the opposition. They spoke very highly about their honor to support an Egyptian heritage.
So you worked on all the loopholes and you tried to make it sort of flawless.
Yes.
Which was definitely a lot of hard and very diligent work.
Yes, it passed anonymously. That means not even one person objected.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't happen too much in Parliament.
Absolutely. This is something you should be really commended for, and you did that genuinely from deeply in your heart, like, with no, like personal intent in that. And going back to Dr. Tarek, you are an expert in many, many fields, including like civilizations and liberalism, and both of Canada and Egypt played at 2 different eras, 2 different times in human history, a role of a pot of integration, a pot of assimilation, not a melting pot model. So sometimes people might call that like a salad bowl. So in the ancient times, even before, at the dawn of history, Egypt was the cradle of civilization and had interaction with all different civilizations around the world. Again, during the Middle Ages, a lot of civilizations, came into the Egyptian fabric, but they were not forced to become part of it, but they deliberately dissolved and assimilated completely into the Egyptian culture. On the other hand, today, Canada is the world leader of integration and harmony between multi-cultures. And as we say here in Canada, we are strong because of our differences, not in spite of them. So some few other countries, maybe like Singapore, like other countries with different, structures of demographics, they have different ethnic groups, different religious groups, were successful in combining them in absolute harmony. Unfortunately, this is something that most other countries did not succeed in doing. That's why today we find a lot of, atrocities and a lot of conflicts around the world. So what is the secret recipe for that, if the term may apply? Like, what does it take for you to be an all-encompassing and like a cultural sponge that would absorb everyone else?
I think this is a question that could be answered in a few minutes, but also in books. It's an extremely important subject you shed light on. Egypt, as we all know, had a golden time in the 19th and 20th century when it was reflecting what you just talked about. When Egypt of Muhammad Ali, which continued from 1805 to 1952, was an example of what you just talked about. We had the Greeks in Alexandria, we had the Armenians, we had the Maltese, we had the Italians, we had the French, we had the three sects of the Jews. We had the Karaite Jews, we had the Rabbanic Jews, and the Rabbanic Jews have two groups. We had them both, the Ashkenazi and the Sephardi. This is the secret, that you do not lock yourself into a narrow identity. Egypt, as Taha Hussein said, is a product of the Mediterranean. The more we realize this, the better we are. Number one, we sort out any problem between Muslim Egyptians and Christian Egyptians. Number two, we recognize what people from Grand Syria, from Turkey, from Greece, from Italy, from Malta have done to our culture. Look at our art, the cinema, the theater, the magazines. The pioneers were all from Lebanon and Syria, but Egypt. And when somebody says to me, all of your papers and magazines were established by Syrians, Palestinians, and Lebanese, I say, but why they didn't do this job over there? They could have done it at their own country. So it must be a secret in the place. What made Naguib al-Rahani to come to Egypt? What made Badi'a Masadni to come to Egypt? What made all the actors, singers that we all talk about them as if they are Egyptians and they are not. Sabah is not an Egyptian. Naguib al-Rahani, as I mentioned, imagine a non-Egyptian coming to make the Egyptians to laugh. We always thought that we are the kings of this domain, but he is a Maronite from Iraq. And even the king of our colloquial Egyptian poetry, his name is Bayram al-Tunsi. Mm-hmm. The man came from Tunisia. So the more we settle on this issue, identity, the better we are from the perspective you just referred to. Our identity that many of us love is a Mediterranean identity. And we are not claiming something elusive. Mm-hmm. When we say we are Mediterranean, geography supports us. We are Mediterranean.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Geography will support our view that we are Mediterranean. But when somebody say we are an Islamic or an Arab, I will say yes, but not fully. This is the whole thing. Mm-hmm. The only thing that is in full that we are Mediterranean, a product of our location. We speak Arabic, but it is our own Arabic. We have Muslims, but we have Christians.
Absolutely.
So the more we sort out this issue of identity, the better we will be from the cosmopolitan standpoint that you refer to. We lived for 150 years from the beginning of the 19th century to the middle of the 20th century with no problem whatsoever with regard to identity. Mm-hmm. But imagine Egyptians who always thought that they are Egyptians, period, until 52, were subject of brainwash. Somebody came and told them in the 50s and 60s, no, you are not Egyptians, you are Arabs. And then in the beginning of the 70s, another leader came and said, I'm the Muslim leader of a Muslim country. Mm-hmm. What a mess for identity this is. It's too unfair that in less than 75 years, you try to have two new identities, the Arab and the Muslim. We have full respect to the Arabic language and to the Muslim faith, but we say within the facts of history and geography, we have our own identity.
Absolutely, and yeah.
Yeah, when the Copts are, I mean, can you imagine that there are many people inside Egypt don't know the correlation between the word Copt and Egypt? Mm-hmm. They don't know that they both come from the same word.
Absolutely.
So
a Copt is an Egyptian.
I fully agree. Being a cosmopolitan, being a country for all cultural colors is an asset that we have the basis of. We need only to work on it. And if we won't do much, because it is deep inside us that we are Mediterranean, all what we need is to clean a bit of what happened in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when there was an attempt to impose different identities. Only the generation of my father, when they say the Arabs, they mean people coming from Arabia. They don't mean the Egyptians. When they say we have Arab neighbors, it means immediately that we have people from outside the country. And we never refer to believe that you shed light on a very important point. One of our assets is our ability to be cosmopolitan, international, multicultural. We are not going to create it. It is there. Mm-hmm. We need only to do some work on it. I would like to comment on what you said before, when you said the Egyptian section in museums. 5 months ago, I was in Turin. I entered the Museum of Turin and I asked about the Egyptian section. They told me there is no Egyptian section. The whole thing here is Egyptian. Mm-hmm. Look at the name of the museum. The name of the museum in Turin is called the Egyptian Museum. Imagine 5 floors of Egyptian antiquity. It means a lot. Do you know that there is nothing like this for any other country?
Absolutely.
You will not go to Milan or Rome and find the Lebanese museum. I mean, with my full love and respect to Lebanon, but there is nothing as such.
And the Egyptian obelisks as well that are found in France, in the USA, in the Vatican, just like one Egyptian obelisk, and it's put in the most significant center of each of these, cosmopolitan and metropolitan cities. Absolutely, thank you very much. And moving to MPP Sherif, you are a role model, really, I guess, for that. And you are someone who's so proud of your Egyptian heritage, your Egyptian origin.
Yes.
But you're a member of Parliament in Canada.
Yes.
You are a lawmaker. You're part of the legislative body here in Canada.
Yes.
So, what is your secret formula here for being so Canadian, so fully immersed in the Canadian culture, being a very proud Canadian like you are, but at the same time being proud of your Egyptian heritage?
Yes, I agree 100% with what you said, and actually the secret, you already said it in what you introduced me as, a proud Egyptian but Canadian.
Yeah.
So the secret here is Canada embrace different cultures. I'm not saying let's say, would say, oh, let them do whatever they like. Mm-hmm. No, it's not that. We would like to celebrate with you. We would like to join you. We would like to understand. We would like to join you. We would like to understand more about you. And you can see that, like the whole Canadian community and the political system as well, like the government and everybody. To attend the gallery and Two Faces,
Yeah.
or I'm only not only letting them do their celebration, like allowing them to do celebration. No, we do join them. We like to celebrate. We like to. Here in mind, I actually start being very protective more than usual. Why? Because I'm feeling that I might lose my grip over my cultural background. But when you feel that it's celebrated, Indians are celebrating, you go in Indian festival, you feel like you're in New Delhi.
Absolutely.
You go in Markham in Chinese festival, you feel you're joining China now.
Exactly. Yes.
So you don't have the fear of getting washed out as your culture, Egyptian culture. And actually, I'm saying that one of the ideas behind the Egyptian Culture Month, not celebrating Egypt only, but celebrating the Egyptian Canadians, recognizing the Egyptian Canadians and the Canadian culture attribute contribution to the Canadian fabric. We are part of that fabric. We have a piece of that fabric with Egypt name on it, with the stamp of Egypt on it. And that's very proud for us to say we are Egyptians. And we are not afraid to say, oh, Canadians are going to feel bad about that. No, because every Canadian here, even if you met somebody who said, I'm 7th generation Canadian, but my 7th grandfather was from Ireland, or from England, or from Serbia, or from Egypt, or from anywhere in the world. So to start with, everyone in Canada have some heritage, of some sort.
Absolutely.
Italian, very big Italian community, Portuguese community, South Asian community, Chinese. I have a Chinese friend who's Canadian for 7th generation. I'm saying, like, I never thought about Chinese coming to Canada in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
He said no. There was like thousands of Chinese workers came to build the railways.
Absolutely.
So he actually went and digged the National Archives until he found the grave of his grandfather in British Columbia.
Yep.
And he went and visited. He said, like, I found my original grandfather, Chinese grandfather, came to Canada in 1905 or whatever. So with that said, it's very important to us to understand that it doesn't decrease our Canadian patriotism to say we are Egyptian Canadians. And we celebrate that. And again, like, the most important thing I advise all the Canadian Egyptians or Canadian immigrants is celebrate with others. If we have an opportunity to celebrate, why you say, no, that's not, this is not my feast. This is, no, I don't believe in this, or I don't believe in that. It doesn't mean that you believe in something if you join the celebration. Enjoy the cultural richness we have in Canada. I learned tons of information since I get involved in politics 18 years ago. I learned tons and tons. I can't imagine how much information about different communities. different cultures, different sub-communities of sub-countries. Like when you sit with some Serbian and he tell you about Serbia before Czechoslovakia. Not written history. Like sometimes this information you gather, if you go and dig in the internet, most probably sometimes you don't find it.
Absolutely.
It's not written
Yeah.
history,
Yeah.
it's real history. People who lived that era, or his grandfather lived that era. I would give another example, which is I was very astonished about when we talk about multiculturalism. I visited the Sikh Heritage Museum, and they had a tombstone, 1913.
Wow.
So written in Indian Hindu writing and English. This soldier died protecting or fighting for the Queen, 1913. So some Sikh Indian died as part of the Canadian Army fighting for the Queen in 1913.
And the continuation is our
we are
Minister
so
of Defense.
late. We are so late. I'm very happy that it happened. I'm very proud that I brought this part in. I think it was a missing block, and I think us as Egyptians, not me specifically, but us as Egyptians, we should be very, very, very proud to have that signature on the Canadian history.
Absolutely, absolutely. And moving to Dr. Tarek, and like you're an international expert in this matter, and that's not an exaggeration. Like two terms that are usually very controversial and usually very misunderstood are the terms of liberalism and secularism. So some people have this stereotype or this stigma saying that secularism is the equivalent of atheism or is anti-religion, and liberalism means like you'd be just living out of bounds. You'll be just, not abiding by any kind of moral values and so on. Before I ask my next question, I would like to get from you how you view both of these terms and the very correct definition of both terms, liberalism and secularism, please.
You are absolutely right. These two terms have been deformed in some societies, but to different degrees. The word secular, as you just described it, have been destroyed,
Misused.
and misused. No, and also it was meant. Some people meant to say that secular equals atheist, as you mentioned, which is a joke. Academically, it's a joke. Secular means that you believe that religion is a personal matter. The state has no religion. It cannot have a religion by definition, because it is not a natural persona. It is a moral persona. So religion is related to natural persons. You and I, Mr. Sherif, are natural persons. So we could have religion. The state cannot have a religion. It will be silly to say Islamic country. It is deformation. So the word secular means actually that Europe, over the decades of struggle, reached the following: in order that we keep the clergy far anything. But meanwhile, the state cannot have a religion. The state is a civil entity. Once of a sudden, in the 20th century, we start receiving these words: constitution, democracy, freedom, human rights, products that grew in Europe over centuries. They came to us once of a sudden with the two words you mentioned, secular and liberal. Some of us don't like the two of them. So they say secular, oh, it means that you don't believe in God and don't respect religion. To the contrary, this is not correct. Churchill was a Christian, but he never used Christianity in the parliament. It's a different story. So we have to work very hard culturally on these terms. Personally and honestly, I don't use the word secular in Arabic a lot. This proves that your concern is very right. If I use the word secular in Arabic, I would lose some of my audience. But if I use the word civil state and civil society, they are bound to accept it more than secular. Why? Because somebody deformed the term secular. I think liberalism is less deformed. I think in the Middle East, liberalism is seen as the counterpart of socialism. In socialism, you have directed economy. In liberalism, you don't have directed economy. You have free economy. Very few people take liberalism the way you mentioned, i.e., I'm free to do whatever I want. I'm not governed by any ethics.
Thank you very much for the clarification, Dr. Tarek. And back to Sherif here, like again, from your own first-hand experience. Now, some people would argue that secularism and liberalism usually come hand in hand. They're totally inseparable. You cannot have liberalism without secularism and vice versa. This is my first part of the question, but the complementary part here is that, do you think that this is part of the very special structure of the Canadian policy? Like, this is the way Canada succeeded in creating this multicultural fabric?
Of course, like secularism and liberalism are part of the Canadian values. And again, when I say liberalism, some people will go to the Liberal Party. Liberalism is something, and Liberal Party is different.
Okay.
And liberalism is a very generic. I'm conservative. I'm representing conservative, but so the liberalism in the way of thinking, in the way of looking to the other, in the way of evaluating the rights of everyone. That's liberalism. This is a core Canadian value, core Western value, actually, not even Canadian value. It's core Western value. I'm free as long as my freedom does not touch your freedom. As long as I'm not getting to over your rights, I'm free to do whatever I like, and nobody should object that because I'm not hurting anybody.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a core value of our Western civilization here in Canada and everywhere else. And again, to build on what Dr. Tarek said in regards to the multiculturalism and the people coming from all over the world, and how Egypt was the go-to place, the go-to heaven for many escapers who escaped from whatever it is. It's a war, Armenian from a genocide, Nubian, Sudanese, Arabic, Arabians, Moroccans, like all those people escaped to Egypt because there was a system which protect them, protect their rights as human, protect their rights. all of them, but there's a percentage of them weren't that successful back home. Why? Like, it's always a question. If the Egyptians are very, very successful like that, why they weren't successful back home? We have lots of examples, like Dr. Magdi Yaqub, for example. He was told that his hands doesn't fit a surgeon when he was a student, and he went to England and become the biggest or the most honorable surgeon in the history of medicine. So why is that? And that's actually something really get me thinking since I came to Canada. And it's very simple. When immigrants come to here and they start from scratch like me, like anybody else, I started working at Tim Hortons, wearing coffee for 7 months night shift. When I left my job as Middle East IT manager for Middle East with 10 different offices, like very high profile professional job. And I started from zero, from Tim Hortons, 7 months pouring coffee and build up. This is the secret. People come immigrated to a new country with set mind that I have to succeed. I know that I have to work hard. I know that I have to put extra effort to succeed. And that's why they succeed. Like, don't you think at some point in time, somebody told me that, some Canadian told me, do you think that Canadians would trust you versus somebody who was born Canadian and have been here for many, many generations? And it made me think twice, 3 times, 4 times. And I think and that's why I managed to reach this, because I managed to get the trust of not the Egyptians, just to give maybe not a secret like that, Egyptians in my writing, deity, in my writing, not made me member of parliament. This is nothing always Egyptian. Like, I don't want them to get upset. Of course, they are my backbone and my main supporters and everything, and they are like my heart and soul. But I am not successful as a member of parliament with one community, not even other communities, but every community,
Absolutely.
all of them, reaching out and respecting all other communities and gain their trust is the secret for that. So every immigrant come to Canada know that he have to work hard, and he work extra hours, and he work much harder maybe than Canadian who was born here, because he feel that if he didn't do that, he's not going to succeed. And that's how they end up successful. And the same with people who, geniuses who exceeded in Egypt, like Naguib Berhane, all those actors and singers who came to Egypt. Majority of them came with zero. Like, they didn't have lots of money. When you talk to any of those famous entities, they will tell you about they were broke, they couldn't pay their rent.
Absolutely.
When they came to Egypt, they didn't have enough money, but they worked hard and they worked from their deep of their souls to be successful. And that's why they ended up successful.
So, do you think here again that secularism, like separation of church and state, or separation of mosque and state, separation of any religious, backing and state, and liberalism, which is exactly like Dr. Tarek commented, it's not anarchy, it's not chaos. Liberalism is not chaos, but it's, like you said, it's your freedom ends when my freedom starts.
Yes.
So, do you think that this was the real essence, like this separation of state and religion in Canada?
Definitely. I mean, look at it. Like, we have, I think the count I last year, there was like 52 different religions. So imagine that the state was giving some favorism for a specific religion, whatever it is. Like, I wouldn't name any names. So that means that all those 51 different religions will be discriminated. Or
Absolutely.
I wouldn't even go as far as saying discriminated, maybe obstructed.
Undermined, maybe.
undermined,
Yeah.
obstructed. Okay, so and we don't see that. Like as you said, you see a Minister of Defense who's a turban. You go to all the police different departments, and you would see like a Chinese officer working beside a black officer, working beside a Sikh with a turban, beside Pakistani guy. Like it's a mix, and as long as everybody respect everybody, then we don't have a problem. The problem will start, as Dr. Tarek said, the problem will start when any group think that he is illegal.
Okay.
Religious-wise, race-wise, background-wise, any wise, it doesn't matter. As soon as they think that they are wrong, now we have.
Thank you very much for that. And Dr. Tarek, like again, secularism. Unfortunately, there are some countries around the world. I prefer not to mention specific names of countries, but there are some countries. If you read their constitution says that this is a secular country, and they might have a secular like set of laws or like their legislation. Their constitution is generally secular, but their people are not. So, how can you have a secular population? Because, I mean here, like, having people in their daily lives, when I deal with someone, I don't have a prejudice against them because of their religion. And secularism, again, involves all forms of, fighting all forms of discrimination. So I just judge the human as a human. What kind of values does he have? What kind of service does he give to the people? So how can we have a secular society and not only a secular government?
This depends on what we mean by secular. Because there are European countries that they have secular governments, secular political life, but people are not secular, and nothing wrong with that. As long as the word secular here means that they are religious, they have their own faith. I'm sure that most of the Italians are very keen Catholic Christians. But this doesn't go beyond being a faith, a personal matter. If we mean that once they are not secular, they will not treat other fellow citizens in aggressive or offensive way, this means that you have a cultural problem. I think that Egypt today is trying to sort out these problems. It faces opposition from within the state, from within the system, because we left it to grow in the wrong direction for many years. I mean, we never saw a president of Egypt, and this is funny and very saddening, that goes to the Christians on the 6th of January to their cathedral to congratulate them of the feast, except in 2015. It was Mubarak never did it. Sadat never did it. Nasser never did it. I mean by did it to go to the cathedral, congratulate the Christians, the Christian Egyptians, and stand with them as Sisi does. But it's very complicated. It will take lots of efforts. Why? Because we left it to grow. The tumor was left to grow for decades. And hatred is much easier than loving. If you work on hatred as a culture, you can make results much faster than those who would work on love. Because hatred is easy to sell. These are infidels. educational levels to sell hatred. But I think that Egypt is on the right track. The opposition is enormous from within the system. I mean, imagine that there is a president in Egypt who has been calling for تجديد الخطاب الديني, renewal of religious education. And he says that I don't get any cooperation in this regard. And why? Because it is not an easy thing. I mean, it didn't take in Europe 5 years to happen. It took centuries. So I believe that we could have secular state. We could have religious people, but who live with the notion that religion is a personal affair, and they respect others, and they don't impose their sense of superiority on others, because such sense is unfounded.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And moving to MPP Sherif, instead of like when we have this like malignant tumor, like you have one of two options, is like to treat the tumor and eradicate it. Unfortunately, because if it spreads, you'd have to amputate completely one of the organs here. And here I want to ask you, as an MPP of Egyptian origin, but you're a very proud Canadian. And again, I want to ask about the Egyptian Heritage Association that came from, from this great idea of having Egyptian Heritage Month. What are the next steps? What are the plans in order to, first starting with the Egyptian community, in order to showcase how the Egyptian community can play a pivotal part in the growth of Canada, not only in like Dr. Tarek said, like in the hardware of Canada, but in the software of Canada.
Yes.
So not only in the technical parts, but in the cultural part as well.
Absolutely. I would like to add to the message from Dr. Tarek before we leave the point he discussed. Is a very important point. And as we talked about secular state and secular constitution and secular way of thinking, there's actually secular message. So the message have to promote the same idea. Like I can talk to this point he mentioned about President Sisi going to the cathedral in the Christmas Eve, and a lot of people would say, like, so what? Like, if he come, that's good. If he didn't come, it's not really big thing. Like, we are going to celebrate Christmas anyway. No, it is important. Why? Because it sends a message. Like, I'll tell a Canadian say, which is very simple, but it maybe give you the idea. Put your money where your mouth is. Like, don't speak to me about charity and charity and charity. If you don't put your money, then what you're telling me is just
empty
nonsense.
talk. Yeah.
So exactly the same thing. If I'm saying I'm secular, I have to show this in my message, in the way I'm dealing with the situation, different situation, in dealing equally with everybody. Like when I got elected, some people said, "Oh, he's Egyptian. He's not gonna come to this event or that event, or he's not really representing us. He's just representing the Egyptians." My fulfillment rate for my invitations is 98%. Like, I miss almost 2 events or 3 events per year, and I do diligently do that intentionally because I want everybody to know that I'm accessible. They can get hold of me. I'll tell you something funny. Like, I was in a coffee shop, and there's 6 students came to me and said, "You are MPP Sabaawy, right?" I said, "Yes." They said, "We hear that you sit in this coffee shop, and we are here to tell you that we don't like your government new policy about OSAP, the students." So they came to me in the coffee shop where I sit, and I asked them to sit, and we had a good coffee discussion about that. People have to feel that they have access. And again, when you go back to the Egyptian Heritage Month, people have to feel ownership. This is the month for Egyptians. All Egyptians have to feel that this is my month. This is my role. This belongs to me. That I am part of that. Even if it's not doing anything, if just by watching it, by going to one of the events, he have to feel some ownership and some proudness of it. Like, imagine you are Muslim, I'm Christian, I have Christmas. I feel that I belong to that. Like, Christmas is part of me.
Absolutely.
Egyptian Heritage Month is part of us. There is ownership. And that's where we came up with the association. The Canadian Egyptian Heritage Association was formed during the period we ran the bill, because the bill needed a lot of work. Like the groundwork for bill, we worked 3 months to get it ready. We tabled it. Took us a month and a half to table it. It took us about a month and a half to collect support, and it was read the first reading, then the second reading got voted unanimously, then it got to the committees, and the Canadian Egyptian Heritage Association did a submission and came and took in front of the committee hearing about why the rationale behind that and why that will benefit Canada, why this will benefit the Canadian from Egyptian origins. And the whole committee was like, I'm not kidding, they were clapping. They were happy. The Honorable Ambassador, our General Consultant Consular in Montreal came and gave a submission. The Ambassador gave us a support letter. So it's a collaborative effort, and every Egyptian or Canadian from Egyptian origin have to feel ownership of that. And the association came together. They are working, all of them are volunteers. They are putting from own time, sometimes their own money, to make things happen, because we are proud of our origin, and we need to show that to the Canadians. Just not even to tell them about Egypt, because most probably all of them know about Egypt, but we want them to know about the Egypt which is in the Canadian soil, us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, I can't find enough words to thank both of you. It was a real pleasure and honor having both of you with me here. Great role models. Dr. Tarek Heggy is like a living role model of the Egyptian soft power, really. The power of enlightenment that came from the cradle of civilization, like next to the river where the very first seed of human civilization was planted. I sincerely thank you very much for being with us, and of course the time difference between here and Cairo, we hope we didn't, hold you to stay with us so late. It's a real pleasure and honor, and we really look forward to having more very fruitful talks with you. Thank you very much for being with us here tonight, and extended thanks definitely to another role model of how to become a real Canadian, a real proud Canadian, a real, very diligent working Canadian for the good of Canada. But at the same time, you are like an ambassador to Egypt as well, like with your work. And at the very end, I'd like to address all the Egyptian community here. Remember, you are a living ambassador. Each one of you is a living ambassador for the Egyptian culture. Canada is our beloved land, is our beloved country, but Egypt is our mother too. Let people know how good a mother Egypt was. Because, when you see the children, how they behave, their manners, tells you a lot about their mother. So please, honor your mother. Give her a good name. It's time to show Canada and the world what Egyptians are, what they can give, and what kind of a great mother they came from. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Thank you very much for both very honorable guests. Until we meet again, have a very pleasant night. This was Muhammad Al-Hadri. Thank you very much.
لن يكتفي